Hey, it's John at MikeBrew-Dudes.com. We've got two dark beers here in front of us. I'm guessing this is another wonderful experiment with malt, yeast, and/or hops. Any more Fuggles hops in this?
No Fuggles in this one.
Okay, so what is this style, friend?
Well, it's just that time of year. So I was brewing up the Czech Dark Lager recently on my big system, and I have the Brewzilla, so I figured I would just whip up something else on the Brewzilla while I'm using the propane system. I got the electric system going. And so this time of year, I like to sort of be able to do these sort of burn up some of the ingredients that I just have accumulated. So this, I'm calling this a bonus stout. So this is a stout. It's sort of a little bit loosely based off of oatmeal stouts that I've done in the past. It's sort of like a, I don't know, it's a blend between Irish stout and oatmeal stout, even though there's no oatmeal here. But it's a, flaked adjunct. That's all it is to it. So let me just give you the recipe. So it's 30% Golden Promise, and it's about 25% pale malt, because I'm using stuff up. And then this is where it starts. So then there's 1 full pound of flaked barley in here. It was supposed to be oats, but I didn't have any oats, so I used up some flaked barley.
What's the percentage of that?
That's 17%.
Okay.
And then this is where it gets a little bit weird, because I had originally planned to go for just 12 ounces of roasted barley, but I didn't have enough.
Oh boy.
So it's 2 ounces of roasted barley, 7 ounces of crisp black, and 3 ounces of crisp chocolate malt. So just a melange of roasted barleys. And then it was supposed to be some Carafoam. I didn't have any Carafoam, or I didn't have enough. So I went with Crystal 40. 4 ounces of Crystal 50 and 4 ounces of Crystal 80. And so my original gravity on this baby was 1040 pre-boil, because I like low gravity, low alcohol beers. I fermented down to about 1015, so it's like 4.5%. And the hops for I did East Kent Goldings, of course, I had to refresh my palate from that Fuggle experience. So it's 1 ounce of East Kent Goldings. This is a 3.5 gallon batch, so it's actually, Anyway, so East Kent's Golding, and then it's Willamette for 10 minutes left in the boil there. So it's sort of like a blend of like American stouts.
What you had left over.
It's just, this is just homebrew stout is what this is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So yeast I haven't used actually before, but I wanted to get a little more experience with this. This is Nottingham ale yeast. I haven't used Nottingham in a very, very long time. So cheers to Nottingham.
Well, that's definitely a homebrew stout. That's for sure. I don't. You're not getting the oatmeal silkiness that you're looking for, but I think the flake barley makes it super drinkable. And makes the body. It's still pretty light.
It is very light, very drinkable, crisp. It's not heavy at all, that's for sure.
Caramel, even though you had like a mix of 40 and 80 in there, it doesn't come out too strongly. It's mostly roast.
Yep.
With a nice mouthfeel, enough hop bitterness to balance it all out.
Yeah, I think that there's almost like a sense of like when I took the first whiff of it after we poured it, there's like a milk chocolatey almost s'mores type of aroma at first, and then as you drink it just sort of dries out in general. It's not super one way or another. It's not really there's a little bit of like, I think I'm getting a little bit of the bitterness towards the back end, which is a little bit hot bitterness, but it's a little bit of that
black
malt. That black malt, that blend of malts, just using them up, and getting them in there. I like it. I think it's an easy drinking stout. I'll take any stout that drinks at 4.5%.
You bet.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And this one's pretty unobtrusive because it isn't heavy. So you sort of drink this. That's one of the reasons why I really like Irish stout, dry Irish stout, because it delivers a nice flavor profile, but it's actually pretty light. In presentation. That's sort of what I was going for with this, just sort of something to keep it light. I mean, it's only like 55% base malt. The rest of it is specialty malt. Which is another way of actually keeping your total alcohol level down, right? So the amount of specialty malts in here is enough to be a normal batch, but I'm pulling down the amount of base malt from what would normally be, say, a 1065 stout. I'm bringing it just down to 1040, right? And so you end up with this weird balance of about 55% to, whatever the rest of it is, 45% of specialty malt, which is sort of not the best way to brew, but it works from a standpoint of trying to get a low alcohol profile. So, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think you nailed the color.
It's super dark.
The head's a nice beigey color. Sometimes you get a nice white head on this, but I think maybe that's some of the caramel malt helping out that color of the head.
I think the head color is really driven by, like in Guinness has that almost tan head. That's because it's unmalted barley is the roast. Whereas most of your other roasted malts, chocolate, black, that's roasted malt.
Yeah.
And those roasted malts give you browner color.
I see. There you go.
I don't exactly know the science behind it, but I know that's the deal.
Yeah, that is the deal.
So,
yeah, gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, that's a wonderful, as we come to the end of the hard season, this will be a nice drinker.
Exit strategy.
The exit strategy stout. I think that's it has some negative connotation to it. I think it's, for exiting the hard times, the whole, cold weather, I think that's okay. Looking forward to brighter skies and warmer temps here in the northern hemisphere. All right, well, that's quite the experiment. What do you think about the Nottingham?
It's interesting. There really isn't a yeast character to it, and it's not really very English-like, but it's sort of letting the rest of the ingredients just do their thing.
Yep.
So using a yeast like Nottingham, you need to really be more than focused on the recipe, the grain bill itself, and for what you're trying to get out of it. If I really wanted to be more Englishy, maybe a little bit more caramel malt or something a little more punchy, or more biscuit type of in there to help balance all those flavors together. Whereas maybe using a SO4 or a British ale or something like that, which has got a lower tenuration in the first place, more esters sort of helps play with all those ingredients together. So, that's why this is really sort of presenting as more of a strange, American dry stout, if that was a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have that on your beer list.
Stout is just a mess of a category, really, when you think of it. There's defined examples. You think about big stouts and Irish dry stout, but in general, it's just, as homebrewers, we can go out to the grain bins and say, this is what I've got, and this is what I'm going to make.
But it's not as problematic as porter as you've brought through.
Yeah, I think in the modern age, porter and stout are the same thing.
Okay.
There are some differences that you feel in your heart. And for me, I know what I would call a porter, how I would brew a porter. I know how I would brew stouts. But it's really hard to porter.
Yeah.
And what do you compare it to on that big lineup that is all these different stouts, right? You get all these different types of stouts, whether it be sweet stout or oatmeal, imperial, foreign extra, dry, whatever, American stout. It's just but I think in the modern age, for most craft beer in America, it's really hard to actually tell the difference between a porter and a stout because they're actually really very closely related. Historically, you can draw the line as to where they diverged and what makes them different. But I think in American craft beer, brewers are either calling their dark, roasty beers porters or stouts or porters. They're almost interchangeable today, I think.
Yeah. You're just not going to throw in a hazelnut cherry flavor to a stout, but you could.
You could. No, you put your Pop-Tarts and stuff like that in stout now. That's right? That's pastry stout.
Oh, yeah.
Where porter suffered in the early aughts from all of those other additives, now stout has to suffer by going through pastry stouts. And I'm sure we've got pastry stout lovers in the audience. Great for you. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But sort of all dark roast, again, it just actually makes my point.
Yeah.
Porter and stout are really one and the same because porter used to get abused with all those adjuncts and now stout gets abused with all those adjuncts.
Gets the Pop-Tart treatment.
But don't get me wrong, a stout with a little bit of vanilla bean and some bourbon-soaked oak is glorious. It's a beautiful thing.
Quite glorious.
But that's the point of doing this with stout, that I think that stouts and dark beers are just a pretty big canvas to play with.
True that. Yeah. Cool. All right, this is Mike's through the night darkly. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to say here, but it's an end of the winter season stout, and certainly looking at the cabinets and trying to make them bare, and brewing with what's left over. So I like this. He's brought this to the table before, and we've enjoyed it. So if you like this video, give us the thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. We do this kind of thing every single week. For John and Mike, brew-dudes.com. Brew on.
Cheers.